Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today I am talking to Erika Zeigyte. Erika is the founder of a team growth consulting and recruitment company called Prosana. She is a remote teams expert and has grown a fully remote marketing agency from 4 to 84 people, from 0 to 2 million in annual revenue in the span of 2 years. So the 4 to 84 people and from 0 to 2 million in 2 years. That is very impressive. And she is currently helping several e-commerce brands and agencies grow their teams profitably. And she is on a mission to help startups build strong foundations by supporting their team development and operational growth. And one of the key themes that we talk about on today's podcast is how to scale up and succeed while also staying lean. Erika, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Doing pretty solid. Just hanging out here in San Diego, drinking my coffee, enjoying the day.
Oh, nice. You're just starting your day, actually, right?
Yeah, I know different parts of the world. Cool to do that from the pod.
Yeah. So what time is it for you? Is it like 10 o'clock in the morning?
10 a.m. Is it 8 o'clock?
It's 8. Yeah, it's 8 p.m. actually. So you're starting. I'm finishing my day already.
Hey, that's how we do it around here, Remote World 101.
Exactly. Amazing. And still, you have the conversation and you don't feel the time zone difference. It's funny.
It's the energy you bring to the call. And it's the energy you bring with if you're talking to a client, talk to a team, it's just like, it's the gravity.
Exactly. Cool. Thank you for having me here. It's amazing.
No, it's honors all mine. One of the things that we were chatting before we click record, and I've seen this a lot, like small businesses, agencies, marketing services, like and I've also made this mistake too. So I'm not just here to shame people. I'm here to admit the first one. I am guilty and culpable. But like when you not overhire, but hire where there's tangent skill sets where, hey, this person actually can fit this job description under their current job. I've seen people hire family and friends as they start to scale. One of the most interesting parts that I see from your perspective is your lens is you can still grow, you can still be successful, but you can do that by staying lean, like the company body fat percentage. So tell me more about your experience, not only just like how do you measure being lean without just being frugal, and how do you plan for that?
Yeah. I think when we speak about being lean, I always say there are multiple aspects in the business where you can be lean. So team and the size of the team that you decide to have is one aspect. Then there's, of course, operational efficiency and how efficient you are with your processes, with the organizational design and so on. So I think, first of all, you have to decide where you want to focus on first. So sometimes you cannot do everything and be lean everywhere. So you just start one by one. Of course, my expertise is the operations and the team. When it comes to hiring and being lean, I think it's always very difficult to measure anything to do with people. It's hard to measure efficiency. It's hard to measure the output versus input. It's hard to do these kind of things. But I always say, which is very contradictory to what I do because I do recruitment, right? You always have to be very careful about who you bring on board, when you bring them on board. Is it really, are they really needed? Can someone in the team do it? Is it better to bring one really experienced person instead of bringing a few junior people? So just asking these kind of questions will help you. And you mentioned a couple of things that I noticed startups make as mistakes is, for example, hiring friends and family. It's not that you cannot be lean by hiring friends and family, but you're actually making your life very difficult because when things get rough, it will be hard to let them go. But then, of course, hiring too many people too fast. I've seen so many fast growing companies, like companies that get so many work coming in, and then they need to bring on board new people. Then that sometimes they feel like they need to maintain this momentum and just onboard those new clients. They start to hire a lot of people. And that's also a problem because every person requires an onboarding, every person requires a training. And unless you are able to provide proper structure for that, then chances are at some point you'll fail and that fall that you're going to have is going to be quite big. And I'm saying this because I was part of an agency that grew really rapidly. And I've seen all those after effects of hiring fast, hiring many people, hiring two junior people, and then hiring two senior people at the time. It's like hiring is tricky and anything to do with people is tricky and you have to be very strategic. So that's why I always say you have to plan your hirings and you're like planning who you got to hire next always depends on what exactly you're planning to achieve. So your goals, what exactly you set to achieve in the next 3 to 5 years, or even in the startups, 3 to 5 probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 years, that has to dictate also how your team is going to look like, how your processes are going to look like. Yeah, that's basically what I would say, what I would call being lean is really knowing where you're heading and then being able to put the resources together to support the journey. So
One of the
that's,
things that, no, this is a
yeah,
lot to unpack. There's two key things that I want to dive into. One
yeah,
is I hate saying this analogy, but I hear it from the words of either clients or teams or past clients. It's the chicken and the egg,
yeah,
which if
trust
anyone has
first.
ever questioned about, the question is always the egg because dinosaurs. Hello. Anyways.
Okay. I hope that I would not know what actually how I would answer.
Yeah.
Well, and
But
good.
but the thing is, when we're looking at costs, one of the things that I look at are you're onboarding more, and it's always I don't know if these. Here's my pipeline. Here's the forecast. I have these clients that are set to renew their contracts, so this is steady. But then I have either 8 or 5 pending deals that could close. If we do
Mhm.
that, we might be over capacity. And again, it's a nuance to measure capacity. You know what your team can handle through conversations. It's not always
Yeah.
going to be like the time tracking stuff or the team is going to tell you. Like there's a certain level of mindset and grit that the team can do because the time tracking might say, oh, they're not at capacity, but they could say, oh, we're actually at capacity, we can't handle more. Or
Yeah.
the time tracking might say, oh, they're overworked. But it's like, no, we can take on 1 or 2 more. But the
Yeah.
question is always, well, what's the forecast? What's the financial constraint? The way that I solve this problem, I'd love to get your thoughts, are
Yeah.
measuring obviously pipeline forecast, cash flow, but then also setting incentives so that the person coming on can grow as those new
Mhm.
clients come in versus just being an expense in the P&L. It's never a perfect science, but that's just one thing that I always look at. Or when the team is at about 80% capacity, you want to start putting feelers out there. So once you get people like clients that are ready, you can start
Yeah.
onboarding everyone at the same time. We'd love you to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. It's a good approach. I think I always say when it comes to people capacity, their growth, when it comes to how much work can you take on board, you always have to talk to people. As this is the only solution. Time tracking, yes, it can give you hints on how the team is doing, but after using time tracking tools for 6, 7 years now and seeing them implemented in different teams, I can tell you everyone tracks their time very differently.
Yeah.
There are people who would just put on the timer and they put in those 8, 9 hours a day. And there are people who work 5 hours and you think they have a lot of time, but they actually still work the same duration. They
Hmm.
just track their time differently. So I think time tracking, it can give you a lot of insights in terms of like profitability, how you should allocate your resources better, maybe to make one account or the other account more profitable. But when it comes to teams capacity, it's a tricky one. So talking to people, I would say, is the best approach. Now, when it comes to when you should bring on board new clients, I think it also depends on what the team says, also depends on where you want to go. Is having more clients your goal? And then based on that, you can make a decision. But maybe there was a better question. Is there another question that you had in mind? I don't know if I'm answering it well.
No, that was the first one, just brainstorm how you approach. And
Yeah,
it sounds to me that you look at the goals, you obviously look at talking to the team, and then you
yeah.
look at is it the right time? So it's always it's an ever evolving chessboard at that game at that point. It's just making sure that you're
Yeah.
making the right move.
Yeah. And also talking about clients, for example, when you want to, let's say you have a lot of clients in the pipeline and then you come to a point, you run an agency, right? And you can onboard a lot of different clients. But is that the goal? Because by having more clients, you will add a lot more complexity. So
Mm,
unless you really have a strategy how you're gonna filter those clients and only keep the best ones, then for example, hiring too many people at the beginning might not be the solution because at some point soon those clients are not going to be there anymore because you're going to let them go. So it really also depends how your client management turnover and all of that happens. You have to think about it. Is that how many clients you onboard and how many of them stay 1 year in, let's say. And based on that, you will also be able to decide how many people do actually need to support the client work.
it's a really good insight. Like I never really thought about it that way of having a
Yeah.
process to weed out bad clients. What are some of the things that you've seen or installed in companies to do that?
To be honest, I think first of all, it's more marketing than anything else is to
Yeah.
really understand what is your ideal client profile. And I'm not talking about the revenue, team size, anything else from like the metrics perspective, but also how you want the communication to be. Is there a cultural fit? Everyone talks about cultural fit from the team perspective. but nobody talks about cultural fit from the client perspective. And it's such an important thing because agency is all about people. So you need to make sure that the team is satisfied working with whatever clients you bring on board. So there also has to be this like match culturally with the client. And sometimes, of course, you cannot match like on all levels, but at least there has to be respect. And I don't have to explain, but there are so many bad clients that get upset when they're not treated well by their, I don't know, clients, and then they treat you the same way. So I think this is also like one big factor when it comes to weeding them out later on, is how they communicate, they treat you.
How they communicate, they treat. That's one of the things that I look at in discovery calls. Is it obviously besides, can I help them? Is it prudent for them to work with me, et cetera, et cetera? The third is always, are they cool? And that's my way of saying, do they fit the culture? Is this someone that I look forward to?
And sometimes you won't know these things unless you work together for 3 months or like even longer than that, because sometimes a situation has to happen, some sort of situation, a conflict or something like that, for you to understand how they're going to handle it and how they're going to treat you when things are not going.
It's like interviewing, right? A candidate can be perfect on resume, can do amazing interviews. Like I've seen it from all spectrums, and maybe you can shame me on this, but like when I hire, I'm the one that has the gut intuition about the person. And I can usually do that within 15 minutes, sometimes shorter. It's served me well. I've also made maybe 1 or 2 bad hires or connects in the past, but 95% of the time, that's just me. But I've also been through like first round of interviews, second round of interviews, panel interview 1, panel interview 2, and you still hire a bad person. So
it happens when it comes to this gut feeling and hiring based on gut feeling. I always say I am also able to tell if the person is going to be good or not based on the gut feeling. But I always say gut feeling is not like some random feeling of your, I don't know, enzymes and all the bacteria in your stomach telling you like this is the person. That's not that. Actually, gut feeling is usually a feeling you get based on the experience you collected up to this point. So this is what your gut feeling is. So I have no problem with that. And to be honest, you probably don't make decision within the first 15 minutes. You make the decision within the first minute because humans have so many biases that you meet the person, lots of things. For example, you can relate to them. They can remind you of someone. They can show certain traits that remind you of your best performer. And then you automatically make this decision. So that's why I always say when you come to the interview, you already know if you like this person. So make it your goal for the rest of the interview. Try to find arguments that deny this opinion, that says that this is completely contrary thing. And this way you will protect yourself a little bit from making a hiring mistake purely because you relied on this emotion. So I think this is basically how I would go about it. But gut feeling is something that we all have, purely based on experience.
Yeah, I think the way that you define it is much more articulate because I definitely don't like to lean on just the emotional part, but more like like you mentioned, the experience part, just connecting the dots. And it's cool. There's a nuance to it. I want to bring it back. You mentioned something that was critically important, and I want to have you help us walk through that. When I orchestrated and helped like design, we say the word growth, but really it's operational design, sales design, like marketing, like it's all by design. But one of the key things that was very important to me when I orchestrated building a team in house was the org design. What does the dream team look like? How do we structure that? For me, it's not like I took a course on this. It was just like, okay, here's this way that I've structured teams, doing it profitably, et cetera. And then you just fill the roles. How do you walk through it in a strategic way to do organizational design? Because sometimes startups like, oh, we're just a startup, just get a body and get them working. Yeah. How do you do org design strategically?
First of all, I would say it very much depends on the type of business, like what kind of, let's say, is it an agency? Is it because I also work with e-coms. Is it an e-commerce business? If it's an agency, what kind of work do they do? First of all, of course, is to understand your core services, what exactly you as a business are offering. And then based on that, you need to have very strong people in those positions. And these basically are your core roles or core functions, let's call it this way. And then based on whatever you identify, you then decide what kind of supporting roles you need to basically have the dream team. And sometimes, especially if it's a small company, sometimes you just need those core people at the beginning. And then support people will follow later on. So I would probably say that this is the approach that I would go. I honestly don't know if there's like the right or wrong answer. It's just you have to identify what is your bread and butter and make sure that bread and butter, you have the best people. And then you outsource their weaknesses, you outsource their strength and so on. This is how I go about it.
How do you manage and split between a new job role versus a
Mhm.
line item in someone's job description? Because I've also I admitted making a mistake like that in the past, but I also see this happen so often where we think we need to hire someone else because of this additional job
Um,
description when it actually can be included in existing job roles. How do you manage and balance that?
from what perspective are we talking about? People not being happy that there's additional thing added to their list, or more from technical perspective? How am I going to add additional thing to someone else's plate? Like what?
Well, outside of the management piece, but more like on the design piece. Like there's some roles that can fill those
Yeah,
things like, oh, this is actually part of this existing role, but they're
yeah.
just not doing it or they don't have the proper training. That the management piece to support and work with that person, that's different because like that's more granular. Okay, can this person take it on? Do they want to take it on? Do I need to hire because
Mm.
of it? Are they being overcompensated for the work that they're doing or are they being undercompensated? That's more nuanced, but more from like an organizational design piece, like distinguishing a line item description versus, oh, this has to be a brand new role.
For it to be a brand new role, there has to be enough of responsibilities, enough of tasks to be done. If it's just a few things additional that need to be done, maybe it does make sense to distribute it to different team members. And then when the time comes and you feel like, okay, there's enough work to have a separate role for this, then I would try to separate it. When it comes also to people, like when we hire for startups, we always have this small thing, like a tick box
Hmm.
at the end of the questionnaire that they have to fill out when they apply. And that tick box is saying that I understand that this is a startup position and that my role might change and I might have additional responsibilities that initially may seem outside my job description. So this is how you collect the consent that, okay, I understand I'm joining a startup. Things may change. I might have actually additional things. So this is more from the people perspective, of course. But apart from that, I would say the startup is like this is a living organism. Things
Yeah.
change. And I'm not talking about, of course, corporations, not my specialty. But you, first of all, give to people, distribute different responsibilities based on whoever has the strength in the area. And then when the time comes and you feel like you have enough work for a brand new role, then you basically open up a role, hire a person, and give all the responsibilities to that person.
Yeah. And it's not like a cut and dry process. It sounds like you need to know all the
Yeah,
functions, the time associated with those tasks, as well as talking to your people, having those conversations.
always. I always say that there's no right or wrong. I know there are so many books written. I've read so many books about organizational design, but it's all saying same thing, also different thing. I don't know how to say it, but there's no right or wrong. You look at your business, and every startup, especially, is very different from one another. So you
Hmm.
look at what makes sense at yours, like in your situation, what makes sense based on your team's input, and you just make a decision.
While staying lean and ensuring that you're not over bloating the system.
Exactly. Exactly. And not overcomplicating, because of
Mm.
course, you don't want to overcomplicate simple things. And I've seen this happen a lot. When something that's supposed to be like a very quick fix ends up being like an enormous process for no reason. So you always want to keep things simple. Keep it simple.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Approaching it as it is. Erica,
exactly.
for our audience out there, what's the best place for people, one, to thank you for being on and to learn more about what you're up to if they need support?
Yeah, LinkedIn definitely is the best place. I'm assuming somewhere there's going to be a link or my full
Yeah,
name. So if you just type my name, Erika Zeigyte, you'll be able to find me, connect with me, message me, drop me a message, a voice note, whatever it is, and we can chat.
wonderful. I'll put those links in the show notes. Erica, thank you again.
Thank you. I think your role was amazing.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to get more of these podcasts, please go ahead and subscribe to wherever you're watching or listening to the pod. If you have any suggestions or questions that you want me to answer on the pod, or you have a guest that you want me to interview, please go ahead and email me all of your suggestions and questions at podcast@dogoodwork.io. That's podcast@dogoodwork.io. If you'd like to give me public feedback, you can go on Apple Podcasts, and from there, you can leave up to a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate that. If you like more free resources where you can get my best strategies to help you increase your company's performance and scale profitably, you can get handpicked articles to propel your growth, and you can get trainings and discussions that I give freely online, as well as low-cost resources such as my books and guides. You can get all of that by going to do.io/free-growth-resources. 90% of all these resources are not behind any email opt-ins. So you can get instant access by going to dogoodwork.free-growth-resources. Now, if you'd like to accelerate your progress and shorten the gap between information and action and start seeing results in your business, let's work together to increase your company's performance and scale profitably and serve more clients without the overwhelm. You can request a free clarity call to see how we can best support you to reach your goals by going to dogoodwork.io/apply. Again, that's dogoodwork.io/apply. As always, it's an honor to be a small part in your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.